A reading from Matthew. Now when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, but others Elijah, and still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." Then he sternly ordered the disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. Hear what the Spirit is saying to God's people. Thanks be to God.
Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. I am weak, but thou art mighty. Hold me with thy powerful hand. Bread of heaven, feed me now and evermore. Feed me now and evermore. Open now the crystal fountain, whence the healing stream doth flow. Let the fire and cloudy pillar lead me all my journey through. Strong deliverer, be thou still my strength and shield. Be thou still my strength and shield. When I tread the verge of Jordan, bid my anxious fears subside. Death of death and hell's destruction, land me safe on Canaan's side. Songs of praises, I will ever give to thee. I will ever give to thee.
I neglected earlier during the announcements, as I know you are concerned, Mother Susie is taking a couple of Sundays off. There is not an issue there or a problem. We wish her well and a restful and peaceful time. Quite a few years ago, I spent a good part of my time during the week and on given days providing counseling and psychotherapy. During those times, I would see various clients with various issues going on. Sometimes they were short-term sorts of things. Sometimes they were longer-term. But it was always an engaging kind of experience. I spent quite a bit of time working with couples in relationship and marriage counseling. And it was kind of heightened by the fact that my practice was located near a major Army base. So I would often see couples from the military. In fact, they comprised a good number of the people that I would see, both individually and as couples or families. Oftentimes, we would engage around various things, whatever the issues were that brought them in, but there was a characteristic presentation often among those couples that were military. Most often I would be seeing them after one of the two, usually the man, had retired from military. He had spent at least 20 or more years in this life, and a good amount of that time he spent away from home. Yet while he was gone, everything seemed to go smoothly. And it went smoothly because his spouse, the wife typically, would be there, and she would take care of all of the business matters. She would take care of everything related to the family. She would do often her work as well, and she would do this quite well. She had many years of experience, so there was no reason to doubt her, to question her ability. One of the main things that would often present would be a situation where the man, having retired, would come home, and after a few days or maybe a few weeks of being home, or some traveling that they had done now that they are retired, they would come home, and he would take it upon himself to try to get everything in order. There was so much more and so much better that she could do with the finances. There was so much better that she could do with the children. He knew all of this. Yet in the midst of all of that he knew, he was not realizing that for lo, these many years, they had done quite well without him. Now, this would present as a serious situation, because one thing that she was often quite willing and ready to say, because of the strength of her own strength for those times, is that, hey, wait a minute. I know how to do this. Don't come back here and try to tell me how to be who you want me to be. That was a major thing for them to finally begin to say that out loud, and could be the beginning of new space together, of a new movement in this relationship. But nevertheless, it was a place where they treaded lightly. And invariably there was this light that would go on in their eyes, and sometimes one or both of them would look at each other, or they would look at me and say, I've never seen her like this before. I've never known him to be this way. Maybe you have similar experiences. Maybe after a good time in a relationship with a lover or a spouse, something has happened, and you've begun to see that person in a completely different light. You never imagined that they could be that way. Maybe it had to do with their expression of sadness or anger, or maybe it had to do with something that they said or did that was incredibly competent, and you never knew that they could do that. Sometimes the awakening of these things in our relationships take us to new and wonderful places, and sometimes they take us to dangerous and somewhat frightening places. Sometimes they elevate our relationships, and sometimes they lead to their demise. I think that our developing relationships is a developing understanding as well, one in which we come to develop our understanding of that other person, or of ourselves in relationship, or of those two things together. I've often asked couples, who do you think he is? Or who do you think she is? How would you describe them so that I can understand how you see them? And it's interesting to hear their responses. Jesus, as they entered Caesarea Philippi, looked at his disciples and he asked them a theological question. Who do people say that I am? Who do the people out there say that I am? And they began to respond. Well, some say that you're a prophet, and some say that you're a Messiah. It's kind of like when you and I recite the creed, and we say we believe in Jesus, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of, they were making a creedal statement. But then Jesus is not happy with theology. He's not happy with this sculpted image of how people see him. So he changes the question a bit, and in so doing, he goes to the heart of the matter. Who do you say that I am? How do you see me? We've been in this relationship now for this time period. We've grown together. We've developed these things. How do you see me? Simon took the bull by the horns, so to speak, and he said, "You're the Messiah. You're the Son of God." An incredibly insightful thing that is somehow based somewhere in his experience of Jesus. And Jesus looks at him and says, "No formalities with you anymore. You're not Simon, you're Peter." And it's this kind of thing, the way you see things and upon you, that I will build my church. Nancy and I on Saturday evenings often like to sit down when we finally get to that point and watch an antiques show. Perhaps that says more about our age than it does anything else. But we get great joy in looking at these things where people say, "I bought this for 30 cents at a yard sale, and oh, by the way, it's worth $300,000. Never really has happened with me, despite the number of yard sales I've gone to. Or sometimes someone will bring something that is of obvious historic value. I mean, they know it is, and the person doing the appraisal will look at them and ask them, "Tell me the story. Tell me how you came to get this or where this came from." And they will sometimes paint the story of how they acquired it cheaply somewhere or whatever. Or they will talk about how it's been handed down through the generations of their family. And as they do that, then they will say, "And it was this famous person who gave it to them. And oh, by the way, here's a picture. Or by the way, here's a written document that documents how this happened." And the person doing the appraisal will look at it and say, "Well, normally we would say this might be worth X amount of dollars. But because of the provenance, it is worth so much more." Who do people say that I am? That's a very kind of stark and basic kind of question. Who do you say that I am tells me that provenance is important. What is important for us in identifying the role of Jesus in our lives is our story of our life with Jesus. And it may start as children, or it may start as adults. It may start in these dramatic kinds of ways in which there was some spiritual movement in our lives, or it may start gradually, or it may start because someone important in our lives walked along beside us. And because of the way they walked along beside us, we encountered a new and deeper relationship with Jesus. This is the question for you and me today. It's not how you and I speak the creed or any of the creeds. It's not whether we claim the church's position on this or that, but it is about how Jesus has moved in our lives, how we have been transformed to be who we are in the name of Christ, how the water has washed through us, the water of baptism, and cleansed us and made us whole throughout our lives. Who do you say that Jesus is? Don't give me some very narrow and brief description. Rather, tell me the story, live the story, and as you walk along beside others, they will claim that as part of their story too. And they will do so for one simple reason. When we tell the role of Jesus in our lives, provenance matters. Amen.